Russia is invading Ukraine. This comes at a time of massive economic upheaval. We've currently got runaway inflation. Germany just reported producer price increases of 25%, including energy. Now, taking away energy, they've still got 12% inflation. This is the highest level since they've started recording the figures. We've got ginormous national debts from all the recent stimulus spending. We've seen what I like to call debt increases on steroids. We've had stock market and real estate bubble-like mania. And recently we've got a bit of a rental crisis where many renters can't secure a property. So with that and much more going on in the global economy, we've got one of the biggest potential military moves we've seen in a long time, and the impacts could be massive. So today I want to talk about some of the high-level impacts that could result from Russia invading Ukraine. I'm Biko Konstantinos. Now let's get into it. It would really support me if you could like this video. And if you enjoy finance and investing analysis on a broad range of topics, please consider subscribing to my channel. I'd love to have you on board. So what's the ramifications of this Russian move into Ukraine? So Ukraine, very large landmass, so it would be extremely strategic for Russia to try and take over. And a country with many natural resources and bordering onto Russia, you can see why it might be highly desirable for a strategic leader like Vladimir Putin. Now, this doesn't look like a bluff. It looks more and more likely that there'll either be a partial type invasion or a full-blown invasion of all of Ukraine. So I'm not going to go into the political side of things, but I am going to discuss potential economic impacts and potential investment type impacts that this military action could have. The biggest risk here for all global economies would be an actual war that resulted from this action, but that doesn't seem to look too likely at this stage. So not actually considering a full-blown war which might involve other countries, I'll just consider a potential invasion of Ukraine by Russia. What we know is that the US, the UK, and the UN would all be retaliating with sanctions against Russia, which could then lead to Russia retaliating in kind. Now, because Russia is not a large global trading partner, sanctions and retaliation will not have a massive impact on the global economy. However, it will have an impact, and the biggest impact would be on Europe. Europe gets 40% of its natural gas and 25% of its oil from Russia. So if Russia, say, were to withhold some of that gas and oil, prices could start to skyrocket and Europeans would be hit with much higher bills. Another big impact could be on food prices. We've already seen massive increases in food prices due to inflation. But this could get a whole lot worse because Russia is the largest supplier of wheat. And if you combine Russia with Ukraine, that accounts for nearly a quarter of the global wheat export. Ukraine send more than 40% of their wheat and corn exports to the Middle East and Africa. So further food shortages in some of those areas could result in price increases and unfortunately maybe social unrest. Lebanon, which is currently experiencing an economic crisis itself, received more than half of its wheat from the Ukraine. So any impacts there could be disastrous for Lebanon. The impacts from any disruption in exports will not greatly affect the globe, but will affect some areas and some countries quite significantly. I think one of the biggest impacts might be inflation. We've already seen global shortages, backlogs, and residual effects from COVID spike inflation in many countries to levels not seen in decades. This has resulted in countries to start raising interest rates, with the US indicating that they'll be raising interest rates this year and many other countries also doing the same. However, if this invasion led to further shortages which spiked up inflation more, that could really have significant impacts as they're already grappling with super high levels of inflation. So the result could be more aggressive interest rate rises, which could have a significant impact on the stock market, on the real estate market, on businesses who will have much higher borrowing costs, and that could ultimately lead to a recession in many countries. So we could end up with this situation where we have very high levels of inflation across the globe, slow or negative economic growth, and massive national debts that many countries have built up during COVID as they spent an excessive amount of money trying to keep the economy strong and running. The trouble with this approach has seen certain sectors rise so much and on such high speculation that they've reached bubble-like territory. If we consider the stock market, how high the Nasdaq and the S&P has risen since COVID, and if we have a look at real estate markets, which have risen crazy amounts and have resulted in the worst housing affordability rates ever. So further fuel is added to an already super hot inflation. It could be devastating to the global economy. In normal sort of global economic periods, this sort of action would probably not have as much effect, but because the world is grappling with the after effects of COVID, with super hot inflation, with record national debts, the potential impact from this invasion could be quite significant. In my opinion, the greatest risk is that inflation starts running out of control and interest rates have to be risen much more aggressively. This could actually crash the stock market and the real estate markets, just depending on how aggressively they have to be raised. I'd love to hear your thoughts about impacts from this invasion in the comments below. Do you see any other key impacts economically? Investment-wise, things like oil could rise. Certain commodities might rise out of this situation. Russia's one of the largest exporters of palladium. If Russia cuts off supply, there could potentially be a run to safe haven type assets like gold and silver, especially if uncertainty and global relations remain volatile. Hey, thanks so much for watching my video. It's truly appreciated. Do you want to subscribe? I'd love to have you on board. I'm Biko Konstantinos, and I will catch you in my next video.